Well, good morning. I'll call the Benton County Board of Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, July 5th, 2023 to order. First up is introductions. I'm Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Good morning, Zan Ojo, Commissioner.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Vance Crony, County Council.
Suzanne Hoffman, Interim County Administrator.
And in the room,
Corey Rogan, Public Information Officer, Benton County.
Eric Michael.
Resident in Benton County.
Amanda Makepeace, Administrative Specialist.
Phil Ermer, resident of Benton County.
Bill Coon, resident of Benton County.
all right, and
Jeff Van Arsdal, Benton County Sheriff.
morning. All right. Next up is, are there any announcements this morning? Hearing none, we'll move to review and approve our agenda. Yes. Thank you. The agenda is, there are no changes, just a couple FYIs. We'll have a public hearing at 11, or as close to 11 or after, in the matter of vacating 2 portions of Coon Road. After number 9, other, we will do the service districts. We have 3 service districts to consider. And then item number 10. Oh, okay. Item number 10, executive session with Tracy Martineau from HR. There's no other comments. I will assume the agenda is approved. Next up is comments from the public. We have 2 people signed up. You want to go first, Bill? Come up to the table and you have up to 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm disappointed we didn't have a pledge of allegiance before the beginning of the session. But what I'm here for is to talk about the funding or the proposed funding for a courthouse. Measure 2-130 is contributing money, I understand, to the general fund, which was not its intended use. The measure was designed to provide health services funding, safety services measures, and correction services. And if the money is being diverted to the general fund from 2-130, I have a question. Is that a misappropriation of funds, putting that into the general fund? If it's not, I don't have a problem. But if it is, I would like an explanation. That's a question. Is that money from 2-130 being diverted to the general fund?
So this is for public testimony. Go ahead. If that's your question, we can look into that. I mean, that requires.
Is there no comment from the CFO or the commissioners as far as that? I mean, you should know that.
We do know that. And yes, there is a portion of the local option levy dollars that do go to the general fund, but the majority of the dollars go to public safety and public health. And that's the way the ballot measure was written. It gave us that flexibility.
I don't recall. I don't recall that in the measure, any of those funds being diverted to the general fund.
Our chief financial officer is here and he just walked in the
Good.
door. So
Then I guess my question would be directed.
that has been standard practice. So
I'm sorry, go ahead. That's been,
we have always used some money to support general fund activities from those.
was that incorporated in 2-130?
Yes, in the way it's written. Vance, some comment on that?
Yes, there's been no misappropriation of funds.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that is accurate. Commissioner Ojero is accurate. There has been no misappropriation of funds.
And how much of that?
I do
How
not
much of
know.
that?
I do not know. You'll have to have my suggestion is to have a conversation with Mr. Kreger after the public comment. Mr. Kreger is hopefully well-versed in the levy that was passed.
And Bill,
Satisfactory for me.
your 3 minutes are up.
Very good.
All right. Next up, Phil Ermer. Morning, Phil. And you have up to 3 minutes for your comments.
Hi, my name is Phil Ermer. I'm a resident of Benton County. Given the outcome of Measure 2-140, it is imperative that Benton County Commissioners provide the citizens of Benton County the options regarding the proposed courthouse and the opportunity to voice their opinion. As you know, the bonds for the new $65 million courthouse and DA office came from a quiet resolution R-2023-003 passed on March 7th, 2023 by county commissioners with no public comment noted during, before, or after the meeting. The meeting to pay for this comes from the general fund comprised of property taxes, 8% contribution from the landfill, and from the voter passed 2021 bond measure 2-130 titled Public Health and Safety Services that has had millions of that fund siphoned off to the general fund. The capital investment for the new courthouse is not public health and safety services. Please provide a full accounting of this money. Take care not to lose credibility of the people of Benton County. If you're determined to spend the money, there is a lower cost and more sustainable way. Renovate the historic courthouse for the detailed 113-page owner-directed facility seismic evaluation of the Benton County Courthouse dated June 30th, 2018. A further summary by the engineering consultant DLR Group was published October 2nd, 2020, showing the possibilities to make the existing courthouse seismically ready, space enhanced, ADA compliant, and utilities upgraded for millions less than the proposed $65 million structure taken from the owner by eminent domain. The money saved can go for an upgraded jail. Please get further input from the voters of Benton County. Building a new courthouse on land now used for farming and a likely abandoning of the existing courthouse is against everything Benton County stands for as a sustainable community and is damaging to the world environmental by the in what way? Okay. Continue.
You have about 30 seconds to finish up, Phil. All right. I think your time is up, but thank you. And yeah, okay, you're. Okay. And we're all good with our technical difficulties. Thank you. Next up is the consent calendar.
I did not have a chance to read the minutes. So I don't know if you two want to approve them or if we could move them to the next meeting. I am good in approving the road district appointment.
Well, you're okay with 4.1.
Yes, and if you two would like to do the minutes, that's fine. I just wanted to check.
I mean, I looked at them and they look fine, but
Okay, then I will abstain.
second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Consent calendar is approved. All right. Next up, old business. Bond measure 2-140 proposal for continuing community engagement. Suzanne Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair Malone. Commissioners, I'm just coming back to you following a verbal update that I provided. I believe it was the week of June 20th. Is this better? Okay, thank you. And we briefly discussed just verbally your desire to have a plan forward to collect and analyze a variety of feedback regarding the failure of the bond measure in order to inform whatever decisions you may make going forward. And what we briefly discussed was a process over the course of the next 2 to 3 months to gather together all of the feedback that we've been receiving via email and on social media, as well as conducting a broad survey, broad meaning having opportunity for all community members to participate, as well as a number of focus group activities, 5 to 7 of those. And so I worked with Brenda Downham, our communications consultant that we still have on a contract related to the Justice System Improvement Program. And she did the heavy lifting and pulling together the written proposal that you have in your packets today. It goes out quite a bit farther than the next few months, only for the purpose of giving you a potential vision for a possible path forward following the collection of all of that information and your consideration of it. It certainly is open to your adjustment and change all along the way. But using Brenda's expertise while we have her with us for this time, she thought it would be wise to lay out what she thought a potential path forward would be. And so it's really through October. The timeline in your document that goes through October is what we have currently sort of nailed down, unless you wish to make adjustments to that. And that we had originally thought perhaps September, but the idea of pushing the end date for that body of work to October acknowledges that August is often a very difficult time to bring community members together for focus group activities. And if we really want to be inclusive and give ample opportunity, probably not counting on the month of August to be a really productive time for that would push it out just a little bit more, and but hopefully allow for greater participation in those activities. We believe that the contract we currently have with Downham Consulting will take us through those activities. And then depending upon how you may decide to proceed at that point, we may need to work with County Council and determine what the proper path forward would be for any future contracted assistance. And I'll do my best to answer your questions and also, of course, incorporate any suggestions you have. And we'll continue to work with Brenda on moving forward on the activities as outlined. keeping you informed along the way so that you can make adjustments or different decisions. And if you have any questions that I can't answer, I'll get those answers for you and bring them back.
Okay, do we have any questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you and Brenda Downham for bringing this back to us. I do believe that it addresses the areas that we asked you to go away and address. I think that it's good to slow down and to take a hard look at our plans moving forward and make the right decisions moving forward. So I support this effort. And I realize that the longer term timeline that's in the packet that would extend to up to 2 years before we see another bond measure perhaps on the ballot, but I think that that's, and I'm not sure that that's the right timeline, but I do very much like the idea of a thorough community engagement process to see what the community will support when it comes to a new correctional facility and how best to pursue that, because that is, of course, a high priority need.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think that Brenda is sensitive to the fact that you all may choose slightly different timelines. Like I said, this is just one suggestion or possibility. I appreciated her emphasis on not just getting to the point of the community engagement that will lead to your decisions about how to move forward, but that the ongoing engagement that really is necessary from decision point all the way through potential bond in order to keep that community engagement active, bring any changing sentiment, concerns, or questions to you along the way so that you can course correct or adjust, and just keeping awareness and education and accurate information flowing at all times.
All right. The proposal looks good to me, and I can, well, one thing I'd like to add is that this is continuing community engagement. We have done our best throughout this whole process to get the best advice and hear from the most voices, and I can see coming out of this process a clear roadmap on going forward, including what the preferred timeline should be for going out to the voters again. So I appreciate the work that has gone into this. Is that what you need, Suzanne, as far as direction from the board?
Yes, thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else on old business, we will go into new business discussion regarding district attorney's office and courthouse co-location options. Gary Stockoff and Rick Greger. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. 3 weeks ago, we were asked to go back and develop some options, get some information pulled together for you all to consider regarding a suggestion that had been made regarding the district attorney and the courthouse project and where the district attorney might be located. So Rick and I and our team have been doing that, gathering up information and preparation of some options. And I think to kind of keep it simple, or as simple as we could, we really came down to 3 options, which is in the information that we attached with the agenda checklist. I will say that we have OTAC team members here today, and I think we'll have folks from the architect via Zoom. So questions that might come up that you might have. But just to do the high level review of the proposals. Option one is pretty much stay the course. The DA and the court would be co-located on the new site out on Highway 20. And we would then work together with the courts to try to come up with a square footage and a configuration that works for them and with our budget. The proposed that we've given you is the programmed area that they started out with back a couple years ago. That is what would be the full amount that the state would ask for. And we have the corresponding budget for that, and it shows that both we are short of funds and the state is short of funds with that option. And then a couple other little facts on that one. And one of them is that these costs and the schedule and some of the issues that we've had, challenges, are related to the site, things that we did anticipate whenever the initial assessment was done for the property. And so those have all kind of come together and where we're at now. But one thing that we still are trying to get figured out is the fiber optic for the site. Is it going to be close? Is it going to come from downtown? The state has their own network that they need to connect to. So in our contingencies, we're kind of assuming the worst. And as we get further into the design and coming up with these options, hopefully some of those contingencies will start to come down because the unknowns will be known. But for right now, we're trying to give you, this is the worst case scenario. Option two is the suggestion that the DA would be located some other location, not the new courthouse. That doesn't mean it has to be at the old courthouse. It could be at another facility. Again, showing the area that's there, that shows then that option two is we're in pretty good shape. We have some money left over to do tenant improvements for the DA or have a little extra cushion for the project itself. The state itself is still needing funds as well because they would now, with that option, be sharing everything at the site 50-50, which is not the case with option number one. And then finally, option three is the no build. And I would probably let Rick describe that better because that has to do with our recent bond sale purchase and the implications that if we don't go forward, what that does for us on that side. This also plays into, I think, the idea of maybe some seismic improvements at the old courthouse. I have had DLR go back and update that, assuming that somebody would stay in there, for instance, the DA, and just the seismic projecting out till next spring is about 15 million just by itself. On top of that, there's about 8 to 9 million of improvements that would need to be done inside to facilitate the DA staying there. That does not include anything associated with the old jail, which would have to be removed, and the courthouse that would have to be located probably to the north, on the northwest corner of that parcel downtown if we were going to build a new courthouse. I think that site was assessed way back when, and because of the constraints, it was ruled out. So even more so now, because we know that there's not enough money to do the seismic, the tenant improvements or whatever for the thing and still build the courthouse. I don't believe the court's funds, the state funds allow they need to go into a new facility. So we would still be looking at building a new courthouse for the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague here for option three, and then we can answer your questions as you have.
Commissioner, this morning, real quickly before on all three documents, positive here now is we are now resource.
Sorry about that. I think I would know that by now. We are now looking at, at this project, we're looking at real numbers. So our bond sale is done. We have all the dollars. Those have all been recognized now at this point. The other thing I think it's really important to point out is that the state legislative process is over, and we now know what the state's resources are committed. Now, one of the things I've heard is that, okay, if project costs continue to grow, if the state doesn't have it, they can get it. Well, right now, we're relying on the committed resources that are in appropriation bills. There are no guarantees that there are going to be more resources down the road at a future legislative process. So when you look at this particular document and you see the basis of the 37,500 square foot, which is what the state has suggested they need, there's a pretty significant deficit both on the state and the county side. You would go into a project without any commitment of resources as if that was there. So I just want to make that point is I think there's this thought, well, we can just get whatever resources are needed. There's no guarantee. And on top of that, these are all bonded resources, meaning that if there is any kind of shortage from the state standpoint, those additional bonded proceeds, unless they can figure out some magic to work it, this particular binding, which typically is a kind of a one shot, you wouldn't see those resources until probably 2026 or 2027. So I just want to put that out there because I think that's an important nuance that we need to be thinking about if we're talking about shortages and we're thinking that maybe resources can be generated at the state level. I think in terms of option 3, again, I think it's pretty clear as you look at 1, 2, and 3, as you go down the pros and cons, the cons get a lot bigger the higher the number gets. And so option 3 is really, from my standpoint, the area that there's a lot of issues that are created. First and foremost, if we were to pull out and let's say use our tax exempt resources completely on a courthouse and DA's project, perhaps somewhere else or standalone, it would be us. It would be our money that we're putting into this 100%, and likely that the state resources would not be there unless we're able, of course, to figure out a way to meet that their particular standard. But again, that's a risk that you would have to really consider. I think the other piece that I like to put out there is, and it falls into option 2 a little bit as well. We've spent money, and we've spent nearly $3 million worth of resources already with anticipation that we will get reimbursed through all of these different sources, either the states or our tax exempt resources. If this particular project is pulled, let's say we move away from the site that's at, those costs, I can't just use the tax exempt bond money. I have to use it for the real completed project. So if the scope of the project changes, which our resolution allows, we can certainly do that. I've spent money on a project that will now not be built, and you cannot use tax exempt resources. So we are going to be basically having to eat the resources that we have expended to the state. Now, there's the half that the state has to pay. And again, if you go to option 3, I know they also are using tax exempt resources on there, so I would anticipate they would have the same. So I think that's important to put out there, that you might have to call on $3 million of reserves that we have actually spent already that we're not going to get reimbursed for. I think the other thing, and I know I constantly say this, but maybe it's just the paranoia in me and dealing with tax exempt debt for so many years. There's an expenditure timeline on all of this. It's not that we can, now we're done. As of we've closed our deal, we're on the clock now. We need to finish. We need to spend a certain amount of proceeds within a period of time. If that does not happen, we do not meet IRS requirements, we risk the chance of those bonds that we've issued going to taxable, meaning our debt service just suddenly got bigger. So again, the bad things have to happen, of course, for us to get to that level. But when you're dealing with tax exempt debt, that's why when you issue, we need to make sure we're ready to be able to move forward. So again, I think that's just something that's really important for you to keep in mind with option 3, that we have essentially 36 months to be able to make at least 80% of the proceeds expended. And then, lastly, again, any of these type of things, particularly when you're having to call upon reserves, potentially, if you risk the chance of not meeting IRS requirements, as you all know, we just recently got an upgrade. Our financial strength is strong. That's a good thing. But if these type of things start to be considered, then you risk the chance of your ratings. And then that hurts us all in terms of being able to do future projects. So again, option 3 is really a lot of cons to it. And I'm not saying that certainly there couldn't be other ways in which we can move forward, but I think it's really important to think about all of those. Of course, I'm happy to speak to the other 2 as well, but I know that's one Gary wanted me to focus on.
And I'd just like to correct something that I may have misstated. The budget, the charts that you see in there, the 3 options there, the first one is for the full build out of what the court wants. The second one is what would fit our budget. So you'll see that that one is pretty much balanced, and it's about 31,000. I think we've done some moving around. We could probably get it to 32,000, but that's basically, 5,000 some square feet short of what the state had said. So that was kind of both ends of the spectrum on there. I will also just mention, this has been moved out to next spring. We're hoping for March, maybe June. We still are working through land use. We have agreement with ODOT. We have, a lot of things still moving in parallel tracks. Cost escalation has calmed, but I think we're still, again, trying to give you, here's a picture like we've seen so far. And if it gets better, then it will help the bottom line at the end, but we just don't know yet. There's still unknowns that we're trying to get figured out. So.
Questions?
I don't know that I have questions, but I feel a need to just restate what I'm hearing in my own words in order to make sure I fully understand. So the options you've brought us are to continue on our path forward and to work with the courts to reduce the square footage that they have in the courthouse, the new courthouse, in order to bring it in alignment with the budget and to keep the district attorney's office in the courthouse. And we can do that. But Oregon Judicial Department might not be very happy, and the court, the court might not be very happy, the district court. The second option would be to leave the district attorney's office out of the new courthouse, which would provide more funding flexibility and for the county. But it also leaves us with an issue about where to house the district attorney. And it's not operationally as efficient, since the work of the district attorney and all the deputy DAs is basically in the courthouse. And we don't have an alternate site readily identified. And that one's the hardest for me, because in some ways it's appealing to have a continued use of the old historic courthouse, but 15 million for seismic retrofit plus the kind of the final furnishings and all of the electrical and everything else at 23 million. That's just, that's a lot of funds that we don't have. And we looked long and hard at keeping the courts in the historic courthouse, and that courthouse does not meet present courthouse standards from the state. And they will put money, they won't put bond dollars into renovations. So we're boxed in, and it's a very frustrating situation to find ourselves in.
And if I might just add in terms of the option 2, and thank you, Commissioner Ogier, well said in terms of both of those. I think when you look at option 2, as you said, it puts us in a place where we could meet the needs as it relates to the standalone courthouse. As Gary pointed out, it still leaves the state short. So there is still work to be done by the state if these estimates were to come in. They're going to need to get more dollars than what they have currently committed. So there's that. But I think most importantly, you've got basically after, if we meet these estimates, about $7.5 million left. To your point, there is a cost for a retro, obviously you could go one direction in terms of finding an alternative site, a different building. Can you do that for that price? But if you were to stay in the historic courthouse, you do have a seismic retrofit, which again, anywhere between $15-20 million for that before you even do any form of rehab and expansion. So from a money standpoint, there's not enough dollars to be able to do that particular project. We would have to find other resources. So it would leave us an option to, with $7.5 million, to try to find what do you do to be able to reasonably accommodate the district attorney's office.
And kind of a follow-up that it is a historic structure. So the paperwork and the time to get to where we could even do anything now puts us in danger of this limit on spending the funds. So it's problematic in a number of ways. It really is.
It's probably not as dire as the option 3, as I had alluded to, but certainly there are, as Gary said, option 2 does create some challenges for us. Again, maybe puts us in a better position in terms of being able to meet what the courthouse is wanting, with the exception they still need to get some dollars. But on the other hand, the money left, there's still a lot of risk.
One thing I would also point out, commissioners, if you look at the estimates that we put on there on the state side, there's a TBD on there about most of the way to the bottom for FF&Es, furniture, fixtures, equipment. We've estimated that for our EA part of the thing, but the state is responsible for the court. That money has not been listed in the budget. I don't know if it's in a separate pot of money the state can bring, but based on our size, which you see, we've estimated about $2 million. They're about 4 times bigger than we are. Now, maybe there's, a group discount for more, I don't know, but clearly they still, we believe, have another funding gap in their plan, which comes back to, I think, our ability to hopefully still get with them and say, how are we going to make this work somewhere between what we can afford and what where can we land that we can get the project going.
I would just add to Gary's comment about the FF&E, and we've been working with OTAC on this. I might remind everybody that with FF&E is not a capitalized expense. Therefore, the resources that are dedicated from the OJD, because they have tax exempt resources just like us, would have to come from somewhere else, meaning some kind of state fund appropriation. So again, I think it's important to note all those things, is that maybe they can get it, but it's not on the table right now.
I just wanted to say thank you for the detailed information that's laid out in an easy way to understand. And I especially appreciate, listing out option 3. That's helpful for me because these are big decisions, and it's good to know the pros and cons and exactly what we're looking at. So thank you.
A couple of questions. I've been hearing about negotiations with the OJD for months or years. I guess what's our path forward? Are negotiations still open? And as far as square foot, if we reduce the square footage of the courthouse, new courthouse, then that helps both our budgets. I guess how likely is that, or something between 31,000 and 37,000?
Well, I mean, we're still in the process, and I believe the architects have a number that they think could work for the state, but the state has to tell us that that's going to work. I think as we prepared this and in talking with Rick, his approach was, let's show them, here's what you want, here's what you can't afford. So I don't know if that has ever been maybe made clear. Maybe that's my bad for not. Here's what it is, and here's the gap. So I think, to me, that encourages me, and again, I'm Pollyanna for the most part, that we can get them where we can keep working towards getting a resolution on this work. And I will repeat right here, right now, the DA has given up everything he can give up. There is nothing left for him to give up. None. So it really is on the court side and how it's configured. And I think they've got, one of the main concerns they have is they want a larger courtroom. I think we can facilitate that, but then it's how much remaining courtroom space there is and how things are laid out. So hopefully we can keep that moving along and get to that resolution. But, you know, we have to get going. They're on an even shorter clock than we are because their bonds sold in March, Rick, I think. So their 3 years started in March. So we're kind of in this together.
Well, that's encouraging. I'm glad you mentioned the DA, and this is part of phase one. And I remember discussions earlier in the year about best practices, and memory serves me right. Our DA said 35 out of 36 courthouses, county courthouses in Oregon are co-located, the DA's office and the courthouse. Best practices, and I think at that time it seemed like the board agreed that we would follow best practices and co-locate the DA's office with the new courthouse. And so I appreciate going through the math and identifying where savings could be made, and potential gaps in funding. But options 2 and 3 seem like they have gaps also in their funding. So it's not like if we go to anything other than option number 1 that we're in wonderful shape. We've just changed the problems, and I feel like we've made a commitment on phase 1, and I think we ought to do our best to achieve that. And I guess this is a question for Rick. As far as the funding gap, assuming the state can come up with their share, and the county come up with additional resources to fill in the gap if there is one.
So I think, you know, couple things to that. And, you know, just again, speaking to option one shows a balanced sources and uses. So, you know, again, the positive of option 1 is that if there is the ability to negotiate with OJD to get the square footage to the place that is suggested here, we're good. And I would also add, and Gary noted this earlier, is that we're being very, very thoughtful about contingency. Escalation, he mentioned, is a risk now that we have the delay. I think he mentioned some of the site issues that we may run into, fiber, others. And I think we've been, you know, really good about our contingency and building in. So I think that's the way to mitigate. If you're asking me, is there additional resources I could tap into beyond this, then the answer is this is the resources on the table at this point. I don't have any other anticipated, but that's part of the contingency piece and having it, you know, a good estimate. And I feel confident with, you know, the work that OTAC's doing to help us in mitigating the risk that we're trying to protect. So I think, again, you know, to your point, I think option 1 brings a balance to this. I think, you know, as pointed out by Commissioner Ozero, when you look at, you know, the pros and cons of each, it's the one big con in option 1. There's one of them. And that's essentially that it doesn't meet what the state says that they currently need. And that's really what we're coming down to here, is the discussion that needs to be had with the OJD, and it's time to kind of pull our sleeves up and say, these are real numbers now, folks. And if you look at the real numbers on this first short, we're $4.1 million short across the board. And we got the biggest share of that. And again, like I said before, the state may believe that they can get more money, and perhaps they can, but these are the committed resources right now. That's what we have to look at. So I'm hopeful that, that we can all look at within reason and say, this is the budget. It doesn't balance. So how do we come together and be good partners and figure out how to make the reductions to be able to get.
And I will also add to that. There is a lesser number, like I think it's around 34,000 or thereabouts. We've met the state standards, at least the ones that we saw published in the master funding agreement that Vance was so helpful in getting us almost there. And we realized we needed to take a step back because it was very prescriptive on what we had to do. The only one that we hadn't done was related to the judges' chambers. And at the meeting, they basically said, we're okay with that. So I think right now we're really talking about configuration and how it's all laid out. And hopefully we can get that squared away and nailed down and come up with a number, square footage and budget that fits everybody's needs.
Well, that's helpful that there may be a square footage number in between the 37 and 31 that meets our obligations. And I assume reduces the funding gap.
Correct.
Well, as presented, I would support option one. I was, as I said, very hopeful about finding an alternate path, but I'm not so hopeful now. It's clear that we have a lot of sunk costs in the project, and that identifying a new site in an expeditious timeframe would be very challenging. Most sites have site development challenges. We are at the point where we know most of the site's challenges. We'd have to go through that site courtship all over again, if you will. So I am most comfortable with option one.
So just to clear, so you want to still co-locate the DA's office?
That's the, as outlined in option one, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Or if not, I would entertain a motion.
Well, I move to have staff proceed with option one with any modifications. I would move to have staff proceed with option one and to negotiate further with the Oregon Judicial Department to get us to where we need to be in order to fit within our budget.
Second.
All in favor of option one, say aye.
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 Motion carries, and make sure that option one includes the co-location of the DA's office with the courthouse.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is initiation of a legislative process to amend the Adair Village urban growth boundary. We have Patrick Deppa. Oh, come on up. You had perfect timing.
Thank you. Morning. Thanks for allowing this on the agenda this morning. This looks familiar, this item. It is. It's basically going to be added to the UGB expansion we did last year or earlier this year, but most of the work was done last year. That was successful. And when it was done, though, we noticed this little piece. It's owned by ODF&W. It's zoned right now EFU, so it's kind of in the same similar situation as the other property that we brought in last year. But luckily, we reached out to DLCD. We tried to find a remedy to see if we could get this in without having to go through a whole additional legislative process. Talking to DLCD, LUBA, looking for ways, even talked to legal, and there really wasn't any other way than to do this based on not doing including this in the advertisement and the legal notices that we did last year. So looking to bring in this 0.12 acre piece using the same process. DLCD said it doesn't have to be as long or anything. We basically write a staff report directing all of our findings back to the original 120-page document of justifications and findings, and just addressing it as a kind of a map correction. So this little piece, if it comes in, we will annex it as we did the other pieces, and then it would be added to any future development on that corner. Right now, the Weigel Trust is in talks with picking up that piece from ODF&W. They already have a purchase agreement on the table, ready to go. So essentially just a map correction to kind of include this piece, finish out that corner, allow all the additional improvements to be for the southern part of Riles Road to be completed on these next phases of Callaway Creek. And we're just asking if we could go through the legislative process rather than the quasi-judicial. Found it to be a lot more easier and quicker, and that's where we stand today.
Any questions?
Happy to make a motion.
Just pretty straightforward. This was something that we didn't know a few months ago and comes up and needs to happen, for the UGB process to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an oversight. Neither the city nor the county caught this remnant piece during the UGB expansion process until just recently discovered that this little anomaly sits just south of Riles Road. So unfortunately, that requires us to come back to you and ask you to initiate a legislative process to adjust that or to clean it up.
For 4,000 square feet. Roughly.
I move to direct the county planning official to initiate the Benton County legislative process to consider the proposed amendment of the county's comprehensive plan map and zoning map to expand the City of Adair Village's urban growth boundary by 0.12 acres.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
One more. please. Good. Come on up, Rick.
Sorry.
Okay. This is the Economic Development Office, the IGA contract extension for fiscal year 2024. So we have Rick Prager and Jerry Sorty.
Thanks. Good to see you again, Commissioners. Thank you. As mentioned, we're here today to present to you a contract amendment for our Economic Development Office, which is we currently have we did have an intergovernmental agreement that expired June 30th with the city of Corvallis. So we are looking to extend that. Just as sort of a reminder, of a little background. As you recall, in our budget proceedings, we did approve appropriation or allocation for the Economic Development Office. We agreed as a group that we would not get into the details in relation to that budget process, but we would dedicate dollars and then be able to bring those, whatever it may be, grants or contracts in front of you to have a discussion and gain your approval. So that's essentially what we're doing here. You're going to see me probably quite a bit over the next month on a variety of different things in relation to a lot of those various grants and contracts. So this is the first of that. Within the budget, as you well know, we did approve 2 years worth. We are requesting today, though, an amendment that would extend for 1 year. I think, as you all know, we have had some transition in the Economic Development Office. Jerry's done a great job in terms of the last several months in terms of holding down the fort, but there has been some transition. I think the thinking would be, let's maybe amend for 1 year since we're kind of going through that transition, and then be able to come back and renew in the second year when perhaps some of that transition has have staffing in place and a new executive director for the office. So that is essentially what we're proposing. The other thing I might just mention, and Jerry will touch on this, is that as part of that contract, we've had subcontracts within it to where we've had relationships with other organizations that have helped, and those contracts have run directly through the city of Corvallis. We are proposing to continue to do it that way. I think prior to last binding, we did those separately from the county directly to those organizations. And the two organizations, one is RAIN and the other one is Lynn Benton Community College. And I believe RAIN is here actually. I think they're virtually in, so there are some questions specific to that, but Jerry can cover that. So with that, as a premise, I'll let Jerry talk a little bit about the scope and thinking for the next year.
Thank you, Rick, and good morning, commissioners. I'm very appreciative of county staff for working with our office to bring forward a one-year contract extension. Thought that a one-year contract extension would be the way to go. The city is currently in the process of hiring a new economic development manager, hoping to get that person in the position and moving forward with projects here relatively soon. And we'll provide updates on that hiring decision as soon as we can. The proposed work plan for the upcoming year, I think, focuses on core services of our office that we've provided in the past, which include managing enterprise zones. We have the Corvallis Enterprise Zone. I'm currently, working and looking at potentially a couple of applications in that zone. We established the Philomath Enterprise Zone recently, and there has been interest in development and expansion with businesses in that enterprise zone. So the office would continue to market and use the enterprise zones the best that we can. The office also provides kind of a liaison and assistance to businesses to help navigate permitting processes. We would continue to provide those services. Listed out several projects which we have on our work plan for the upcoming year. One of those is to continue to be essentially an agent to manage contracts with the Regional Accelerator and Innovation Network and the Small Business Development Center based out of LBCC. I think that those groups have provided really valuable service in our community to entrepreneurs, to businesses that are looking to just have questions, looking to expand. And so I think that those groups have played, again, a critical role in our community. Also listed several other projects here as well. And my plan is to be back in front of the board a little bit later in the month to give a report on where we are with our business grant program. The EDO also received funds for a South Corvallis Food Hub project. We're working to keep that project moving forward. We're looking to provide support to downtown businesses, specifically in Corvallis. I think that the pandemic showed the need to reach out to our full business community, and we're planning to continue to provide those services as well. So that's just a general snapshot of what the Economic Development Office is looking at in the upcoming year. Happy to answer any questions that you have, or if there are any specific focus areas that you think that we should be thinking about. Of course, I'd like to get that feedback as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the brief report and look forward to a more in-depth report later in the month. With respect to this list that you have provided, I know that in terms of areas outside of Corvallis, one of the areas that Kate Portia was working on was supporting Adair Village in terms of looking at the use of tax increment financing or an urban renewal district for the city of Adair Village. Is that something that's still potentially on the list, depending on the capacity of your office?
Yeah, I think we are very fortunate in that Kate Portia had a specific skill set and experience with working with urban renewal districts. And I think that our new economic development manager could help provide a liaison to services, at least with Adair Village, because I remember that seems like it could be a really valuable tool for Adair Village. So I would say that the support will continue. It might look a little bit differently than it did when Kate was here, but the intention is to continue to support Adair Village, Monroe, the unincorporated areas as well.
I was just going to piggyback off that and mention also, I believe the city of Monroe and Philomath might also be looking for help with that. I'm the liaison to those cities. I don't speak for them, but that's just my understanding. So thank you.
And I don't necessarily need to go into it today, but I'd be curious, Corvallis Airport, and you know, there was talk in the past year or two of removing the county from that operation. So people that wanted to do something there would have one less hoop to jump through, and just curious what the status of that is. And then I guess the other question, this might be more for Rick, but if memory serves me right, Kate left December last year. So we haven't, and that position's been vacant. I guess, has there been any adjustment in what the county pays the city for staffing?
So I guess in terms of the contract that is proposed, we are modeling sort of the same framework. So the way the contracts have been set up in the past is upfront payment in terms of putting those out. So we did model, at least for this period of time, the same formula that's been used in the past, that amount that goes to the city that's based on ECI. So what Jerry and I did is work together. So I can tell you that we haven't accounted for any kind of savings as it relates to that. I think I'll maybe defer to Jerry in terms of the question specifically on that, but I think that's something, again, if there are any possible savings that haven't been diverted to other activities within the EDO, then that might be an adjustment worth at least exploring a discussion. But I'll defer to Jerry if he has any thoughts in terms of the use of the dollars.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is that not being involved with the hiring decisions, which I think you're kind of getting at right there, my focus in essentially managing EDO operations has been to prioritize economic development work. It's pretty much been the entire function of what I've done with the city, and then as part of the EDO for the past time that Kate's been out of her position as economic development manager. So our intent has been to fulfill the contract requirements, existing contract requirements during the past 7-8 months. Happy to provide report on any other additional specific projects. We can jump into Airport Industrial Park, I think, whenever you'd like. Commissioner Malone, I can speak to it now a little bit if you'd like, or when I do an update a little bit later in the month.
Later in the month would be fine as part of your.
Commissioner Malone, if I may, in terms of, again, the question's a good question. Part of it is contractually how you set things up. And to Jerry's point, it's okay, you pay a amount for the contract and you get a service, the service delivered. It isn't down to the specific, well, it buys this number of FTE, et cetera. So I'm not saying you can do it that way. Certainly can, but the way it's been proposed, it's been, and so to Jerry's point, it's from the standpoint of who's there, who's not there, you still are responsible for delivering service. And that's how the contract has been tailored. Not to say it couldn't be changed down the road. So that's, again, just wanted you to understand it. That's how we've managed.
I guess my main concern is not the money, but having the position be open for 7-8 months seems like I feel like we've missed some opportunities for getting some things done for lack of staff. And there's reasons for the delay, but with all that's going on, every department's trying to be fully staffed so they can get the job done. And this seems like quite a gap.
I'll share that I agree with Commissioner Malone. Jerry, I know you do great work and it's not your decision at all. So this isn't any sort of feedback or criticism to you. In my opinion, it would have been nice if it was filled sooner, but I understand different challenges. But yeah, there's definitely a difference when you're short-staffed versus not. So thank you, Jerry, for picking up whatever slack that you could do.
Yeah, I know you're the messenger, so but that was the message, and do appreciate your efforts keeping the doors open, being short-staffed. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion on page 91.
I would move to approve a $148,472 amendment to IGA Intergovernmental Agreement 502736 with the City of Corvallis to provide economic development services to Benton County for the period of July 1st, 23 through June 30th of 24.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks for the update and look forward to a fuller report of the goings on.
Thank you.
And with that, I think this would be a wonderful time for a break. And we will come back at 10:20, refreshed and ready to finish the meeting.
We're in executive session at that point. Oh, service districts first. Okay.
We have other and then service districts.
So we need to recess this meeting then.
And what we have is other. Either of my colleagues have anything under other? I had something. And it was when I was gone, there were a bunch of things going on. This was email 620 Judy Smith, measure 110 referral. And she was looking for other counties to sign on. Did we talk about that in my absence? Do we have any interest in I guess that's all I know about it. And it says measure 110 referral. I know the legislature worked on that. I don't know. Did anything get through the process?
I think so. I think that it was mostly language fixes to help improve the process of making grants to the behavioral health resource networks, Burns. But I don't think that there were any major changes to the underlying structure of Measure 110. And I know that through that work group process, the main discussion was that we needed to give the behavioral health resource networks a chance to work because they really have barely been in operation. So, but I don't know how much longer. And yes, there are public safety concerns and there are challenges with the way it's working. But I, for one, am not ready to refer it back to the voters yet. I'd like to see whether the system can indeed work to help, whether the defelonization of those street drugs actually makes a difference. Does get people and over the longer term into treatment.
Yeah, and I would agree. Referrals often have unintended consequences, and I just assume the legislature work their magic, and if there are going to be any changes. So for that one, email from June 27th, Good Sam's 75th anniversary celebration on August 26th. And, either of you have interest in that, or is that too far?
I think that I had RSVP'd already that I was interested in that, but I'm not certain.
It's on my calendar. Can you repeat the date, the 20?
It's the celebration is August 26th.
26.
I don't have it on the calendar. There's another 50th anniversary celebration for another institution that day as well.
Just to bring it to our attention, and hopefully one or more can.
In the same vein, there was an email that went out asking for one of us to participate in the executive order on homelessness MAC group. Nancy, did you end up participating in that on our behalf?
If it already happened, no, I did not.
Okay, I think that they were, I think staff were waiting for one of us to serve as a liaison and to respond to the query and request for participation.
Okay, is that a decision that the board, that we should make as a board then?
Since you've been the one that has been the primary liaison to HOPE, I would be more than happy to have you do it. But we had not gotten back to the staff.
When did can you refresh my memory of when that email would have come in?
It would have probably been from April Holland, and I think it was about a week ago.
Okay, since last week, I have 133 unread emails because of how busy everything has been. So my apologies, I need to catch up there.
Commissioners, I do think that April will be at the Health Services Update tomorrow, and we'll speak to this topic. So that may be your better opportunity to make your decision.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other?
Not at this time.
If not, I will recess the board meeting, and we will go into three service district meetings, and we'll start with the Alpine County Service District Governing Board. comments from the public? The public. Hearing none. The consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for the Alpine Service District?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm bringing forward resolution, it's the annual process to bring forward delinquent accounts that are over 60 days past due. Each of the individuals on the list has been notified in writing of the delinquency and provided an opportunity to bring the accounts current, and at this point, still past due. So we're asking that the resolution be approved to advance to the next step of the collection process.
Okay, I think that was in the consent calendar.
Okay,
So, it'll be the same with all three.
yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the background. Any other business? If not, I will close the Alpine County Service District and open the LC County Service District Governing Board. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we have the consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for LC? Hearing none, I will close the LC County Service District and move on to South Third County Service District Governing Board. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, move on to the consent calendar.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for the South Third County Service District? Hearing none, I will close their meeting.
Well, I'm sure all the work you guys did on the back end made it easier for us, so thank you.
So we're back in our regular board meeting, and I will move to go into the executive session under ORS 192.660 2A. And that's all I know about it. And it says Measure 110 referral. I know the legislature worked on that. I don't know, did anything get through the process?
I think so. I think that it was mostly language fixes to help improve the process of making grants to the behavioral health resource networks, burns. But I don't think that there were any major changes to the underlying structure of Measure 110. And I know that through that work group process, the main discussion was that we needed to give the behavioral health resource networks a chance to work because they really have barely been in operation. So, but I don't know how much longer. And yes, there are public safety concerns and there are challenges with the way it's working. But I, for one, am not ready to refer it back to the voters yet. I'd like to see whether the system can indeed work to help, whether the defelonization of those street drugs actually makes a difference. Does get people and over the longer term into treatment.
Yeah, and I would agree. Referrals often have unintended consequences, and I just assume the legislature work their magic and if there are going to be any changes. So for that one, email from June 27th, Good Sam's 75th anniversary celebration on August 26th. And, either of you have interest in that, or is that too far?
I think that I had RSVP'd already that I was interested in that, but I'm not certain.
It's on my calendar. Can you
Mhm.
repeat the date, the 20?
It's, the celebration is August 26th.
I
26.
don't have it on the calendar. There's another 50th anniversary celebration for another institution that day as well.
Just to bring it to our attention, and hopefully one of us, one or more can. All right.
In the same vein, there was an email that went out asking for one of us to participate in the executive order on homelessness MAC group. Nancy, did you end up participating in that on our behalf?
If it already happened, no, I did not.
Okay, I think that they were, I think staff were waiting for one of us to serve as a liaison and to respond to the query and request for participation.
Okay, if it's, is that a decision that the board, that we should make as a board then?
Since you've been the one that has been the primary liaison to Hope, I would be more than happy to have you do it. But we had not gotten back to the staff.
When did we, can you refresh my memory of when that email would have come in?
It would have probably been from April Holland, and I think it was about a week ago.
Okay, since last week, I have 133 unread emails because of how busy everything has been. So my apologies, I need to catch up there.
Commissioners, I do think that April will be at the Health Services Update tomorrow and will speak to this topic. So that may be your better opportunity to make your decision.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other?
Not at this time.
If not, I will recess the board meeting, and we will go into three service district meetings, and we'll start with the Alpine County Service District Governing Board. Comments from the public. The public. Hearing none. The consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for the Alpine Service District?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm bringing forward resolution, it's the annual process to bring forward delinquent accounts that are over 60 days past due. Each of the individuals on the list has been notified in writing of the delinquency and provided an opportunity to bring the accounts current, and at this point, still past due. So we're asking that the resolution be approved to advance to the next step of the collection process.
Okay, I think that was in the consent calendar.
Okay.
So, it'll be the same with all three.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the background. Any other business? If not, I will close the Alpine County Service District and open the LC County Service District Governing Board. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we have the consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for LC? Hearing none, I will close the LC County Service District and move on to South Third County Service District Governing Board. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, move on to the consent calendar.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent calendar is approved. Is there any other business for the South Third County Service District? Hearing none, I will close their meeting.
Well, I'm sure all the work you guys did on the back end made it easier for us. So thank you.
So we're back in our regular board meeting, and I will move to go into the executive session under ORS 192.660 to A. And Joe Martis. And do we have any members of the public that wish to comment? Okay.
So the two portions of road came about when the owners of the abutting property wanted to do a subdivision plat, Old Stone's Throat. We noticed when they did the survey that portions of the existing road was outside of the original right. And so part of the conditions that we have in Public Works, instead of doing full-blown road improvements, part of the improvement would be to wrap right away around this road that's outside of the existing right of way. The two portions are the original wagon road that we don't need. And this will benefit the owners because that if the right of way is vacated, that will incorporate into the property that they have and also increase the acreage because they are in a 2-acre minimum. So you want to have an even acreage so that it can be divided up in the futures. So you don't have any leftovers. And the development department had written that in their conditions. The plat is with us. It's at the planning department. I'm waiting for the process of the road vacation because that's what's going to create the new right-of-way. We're going to get rid of that portion, and then the plat is going to dedicate to the county the new right-of-way. And the chair, when the plat comes out of the planning department, when they get the okay of the vacation, then the chair will sign on behalf of the county for agreeing to the right-of-way. And then the plat can be recorded and the owners can move on with their plat.
Any questions for Joe?
Questions?
If not, I would entertain a motion. Oh, okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak for or against this matter? Hearing none, now I will entertain a motion.
I would move to vacate the two portions of Coon Road, County Road number 45800, as described in the vacation order pursuant to ORS 368.326 to 368.341, order number D2NA23-054.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Sir. A good percentage of the county is wagon road, I'm sorry. So we take what we can get. Thank you.
All right. So I close the public hearing and reopen the regular board meeting. Is there any Anything else for the good of the order? If not, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.